June the 4th, 1942. The bridge of the Japanese aircraft carrier Hiryu, 150 miles northwest of a sand island called Midway. A staff officer hands Rear Admiral Taman Yamaguchi a reconnaissance photograph. In the picture, an American aircraft carrier is launching aircraft. Yamaguchi looks at the photograph for a long time without speaking. Because the ship in the picture is one his Navy buried 27 days ago, her name is USS Yorktown. And what she is doing here, afloat, fight thousands of miles from where she should be, will cost the Empire of Japan 4 aircraft carriers and the Pacific War. This is the story of the 72 hours that put her back where she should not have been. 27 days earlier, the Coral Sea, May the 8th, 1942, just past 11 in the morning. The American aircraft carrier USS Yorktown pushes through a curtain of rain, her flight deck slick and gleaming, her crew watching the sky. They have been watching the sky for 3 days. She is 20,000 tons of steel and aviation gasoline, 800 feet long, 2,000 men inside her hull. And she is alone in the open ocean, hunted by a navy that has not lost a battle since the war began. The squall breaks. 18 Japanese dive bombers find her in the gap between the clouds. They come down almost vertical, engines screaming, the red disk of the rising sun bright against the grey. Yorktown's anti-aircraft guns open up, 5-inch, 1.1, .50 caliber, and the air around her becomes a wall of smoke and tracer. Most of the bombs miss. They throw up geysers of seawater 50 feet high on either side of the ship. One of them does not miss. A 250-kilogram semi-armor piercing bomb strikes the flight deck near the island. It punches straight through the gallery deck, through the hangar deck, through the second deck. Down to the 4th deck, deep inside her, where the men are waiting at their damage control stations with hoses uncoiled, and there it detonates. The blast rolls outward through the steel. Bulkheads buckle, fires bloom, men disappear. When the smoke clears, 66 of them are killed or wounded. Some are killed by the blast itself, some by the fires that follow. Some by the steel splinters that the bomb sends ripping through the compartments at the speed of sound. They have names, they have hometowns. Many of them have been with this ship since she was launched at Newport News in 1936. They are not coming home. Above them, on the bridge, Captain Elliot Buckmaster steadies himself against the chart table and starts giving orders. Damage control parties move into the smoke. Fires are contained. The ship does not slow. She does not slow, and that is the first thing the Japanese pilots, climbing away through the flak, do not understand. By their calculations, this carrier should be dying. By their calculations, the war in the Pacific is already decided. Vice Admiral Takeo Takagi, commanding the Japanese carrier force at Coral Sea, signals Tokyo. A Yorktown-class carrier eliminated. In the Naval General Staff, the planners read the message. They take a pencil. They cross her name off the order of battle. From this moment forward, in every Japanese calculation, USS Yorktown does not exist. It is the most important mistake the Imperial Navy will make in the year 1942, because Yorktown is not dead. She is wounded badly. She is bleeding fuel oil into the Pacific in a slick a mile long. She lists, she trails smoke. But she is still making nearly 20 knots, not the 6 knots the Japanese pilots reported, and she is heading home, 3,300 miles to Pearl Harbor. For 19 days her crew works on her without stopping. They weld steel plates over the holes the bomb opened. They wedge timber into the cracked frames. They jury-rig the broken machinery with parts cannibalized from her own machine shop. They sleep in shifts on the deck plates, soot in their eyes, sweat soaking into uniforms they have not changed in a week. They do not make her pretty, they keep her moving. May 27th, 1942, 2 in the afternoon, Pearl Harbor. She comes in past Hospital Point with the oil slick still trailing behind her, visible from Diamond Head. She lists to port, smoke wisps from temporary patches in her hull. She smells of burned fuel and seawater, and the heavy sweet rot that ships get after weeks of damage gone unattended. Standing on the dock is a small quiet man in a wrinkled khaki uniform. Admiral Chester William Nimitz, 57 years old, Commander-in-Chief, United States Pacific Fleet. 6 months ago, when he took this command, the Pacific Fleet was still burning in this same harbor. Now he watches Yorktown limp in, and he is doing arithmetic. Lexington is on the bottom of the Coral Sea. Saratoga is in California, still under repair from a torpedo she took in January. Wasp is in the Atlantic, far from this ocean. That leaves him, in the entire Pacific, with 2 carriers fit to fight, Enterprise, Hornet, 2 carriers against the largest naval operation the Empire of Japan has ever assembled. And 400 yards behind him, in the basement of Building 1, a man in slippers is telling him that the Japanese are coming in 8 days. The basement is called the dungeon. It has no windows. The air is stale. Cigarette smoke hangs against the ceiling in flat sheets. 40 officers and enlisted men work here around the clock 6 days a week. Many of them have not seen direct sunlight in months. The man in charge is 42 years old. He wears a maroon smoking jacket over his uniform and slippers on his feet because the cold concrete floor hurts his legs. His name is Commander Joseph John Rushfort. He runs Station Hypo, the combat intelligence unit of the 14th Naval District, the Codebreakers. Since December, his men have been chewing their way into the Japanese naval cipher, the one the Americans call JN-25. It is not fully broken. Maybe 10 to 15% of any given message is readable. The rest is guesswork, pattern, intuition, and the kind of stamina that wears men into ghosts, but the guesswork is starting to win. Rochefort's people have been seeing a 2-letter call sign in the Japanese traffic for weeks. AF, the same 2 letters, again and again, always in connection with a major operation. Always near a date in early June. AF is a place. They suspect it is Midway Atoll, the tiny double island station at the far western end of the Hawaiian chain. So they run a trick. They have Midway transmit a message in plain English, unencrypted, complaining that the desalination plant has broken down and the garrison is short of fresh water. A small lie broadcast over an open channel that the Japanese are known to monitor. 2 days later, Station Ipo intercepts a Japanese message in JN-25. AF, the message says, is short of fresh water. The trap closes. Rochefort walks the 400 yards across the base, climbs the steps of Pacific Fleet headquarters, and tells Nimitz what he knows. The Japanese will attack Midway. The attack date is June the 4th. They will come with 4 fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, around 250 aircraft. 4 of the 6 carriers that opened the war at Pearl Harbor. And they will come believing that the United States Pacific Fleet has only 2 carriers in the ocean to oppose them. Because Yorktown, in their files, is dead. Nimitz listens. He says very little. Then he walks down to the waterfront and asks to be taken aboard the ship that does not exist. Dry dock number 1 is still filling when he climbs over the side. Yorktown is settling onto the keel blocks. Water is sluicing out around her propellers. The smell rising off her is foul. Oil, scorched metal, the ruined fuel from her ripped bunkers. Salvage crews stand around the lip of the dock, watching their new admiral walk straight through the slick to look at the damage himself. His khaki trousers are black to the knees inside of a minute. He does not seem to notice. He goes below. The hole in the 4th deck is large enough to drop a car through. The compartments around it are scorched black. There are still dark stains on some of the bulkheads, where the medics have not yet been able to reach. The air down here, even with the blowers running, is bad to breathe. Nimitz walks through all of it. He climbs back up onto the dock and finds the yard's senior officers waiting for him with clipboards, and a number on those clipboards. The number is 90 days. That is the official estimate from the Pearl Harbor Navy Yard to return USS Yorktown to a battle-ready condition, 3 months in dry dock, full structural repair. Replacement of damaged plating, proper rebuilding of the fuel tanks, restoration of the boilers, inspection, sea trials, 90 days by every standard of naval engineering in the world. Nimitz folds the report once and hands it back. He looks at the yard superintendent. He says quietly, "We must have this ship back in 3 days." There is a silence on the dock that men present will remember for the rest of their lives. 3 days, 72 hours. The number is not borrowed from any manual. It is not a goal. It is not a hope. It is the time remaining between this moment, the afternoon of May the 27th, and the moment when Yorktown must be steaming west from Pearl Harbor with a full air group on her deck, or the Battle of Midway will be fought without her. The yard officers do not answer right away. There is nothing to answer. What Nimitz is asking for is not a repair. It is a wager. A wager that one wounded carrier, patched together with whatever the yard can weld in 3 days, can be thrown across the path of the most successful naval striking force in history, in time, with enough fight left in her to matter. He has just bet the Pacific Ocean on it. Out beyond the harbor mouth, the sea is empty and bright. Somewhere west across that water, 4 Japanese carriers are already moving. They are coming for an enemy they believe they have already half destroyed. They do not know about the basement under Building 1. They do not know about the codebreaker in the smoking jacket. They do not know that the ship they crossed off their list at Coral Sea is sitting in a dry dock 400 yards from the man who has just ordered her, against every law of shipyards and steel and time, to sail in 72 hours. They are about to learn. Pearl Harbor, May the 28th, 1942, 5:30 in the morning. The dock is still wet. Water swirls ankle-deep around the keel blocks, where USS Yorktown is settling onto her cradle. The pumps are still draining, the lights overhead are still coming up, but the men are already pouring aboard. Welders, electricians, ship fitters, machinists, pipe fitters, sheet metal workers, carpenters, riggers, boilermen, painters, they come from every shop on the base. Some of them have been working through the night on other ships, and they walk straight off one job and onto this one without stopping to wash their hands. 1,400 of them. 1,400 men in a steel cradle in Hawaii, against a deadline measured in hours. There is no plan in any binder for what they are about to do. Doctrine does not allow it. Naval engineering does not allow it. The damaged structural beams inside Yorktown, the cracked frames, the wrecked compartments, the contaminated fuel tanks. Every one of them is supposed to be cut out, hauled away, fabricated to specification and replaced. There is no time for any of that, so they do something else. They leave the broken steel where it is. They cover it. Massive plates of fresh steel are dragged into Yorktown's wounds and welded down on top of the damage. Where a frame is cracked, they wedge timber against it. Heavy beams taken from a Honolulu construction site, delivered without a single piece of paperwork, and they weld plate over the timber. Where the deck has caved in, they lay new deck on top of the old, and they weld that down too. It is not a repair, it is a scab. That is the word one of the engineers will use afterward. A metal scab. Down in the bunkers, the work is dirtier. The bombs near misses have ripped Yorktown's fuel tanks for the length of 30 frames along her hull. Hundreds of tons of fuel oil have leaked into the void spaces between her decks. The oil has mixed with seawater, and the smell down there will hang in the men's clothes for the rest of their lives. Standard procedure calls for the tanks to be drained, cleaned, inspected, and individually repaired. 2 weeks of work. Yorktown does not have 2 weeks, so they pump out what fuel they can save. They pour quick-hardening cement, the kind meant for airfield runway repair, into the cracks of the tanks that are too damaged to fix. They weld steel plates over the cement. They seal the worst tanks completely, declare them lost, and write them off the ship. A carrier is supposed to carry a full load of fuel oil for her boilers and aviation gasoline for her aircraft. Yorktown is going to sea with less, considerably less. Nobody on the dock is happy about it. Nobody on the dock has a choice. In the boiler rooms, 3 of her boilers are damaged. Standard procedure calls for complete replacement of the boiler superheaters. Time required by the book, 14 days minimum. The yard does not replace them. The yard ignores them. Yorktown will go to sea with her superheat capacity gutted. She will not be able to make her designed top speed of nearly 33 knots. Her best, they calculate, will be about 27 knots. Maybe less, depending on which boiler holds. That is going to matter on the morning of June the 4th in ways nobody on the dock can quite imagine yet. Above decks, the electricians have given up on doing things properly. Cables are supposed to run through conduits, sealed and protected against fire and salt water. There is no time to pull conduit. So the cables are strung along the deck, taped down, threaded through hatches, draped across ceilings. The men run miles of new wire into Yorktown's frame. They run it however it has to go to get power where it has to be. The work consumes electricity at a rate the base has never seen. The arc welders pull so much current that, as the welding stretches into the second night, the lights of Honolulu, 20 minutes drive away across Oahu, dim and falter. Streetlights go out in patches across the city. The civilians do not complain. By now, almost everyone on the island knows that something is happening down at the Navy Yard. Nobody asks what. The war is 6 months old. People have learned not to ask. So Honolulu sits in the half dark, and Yorktown burns electricity into the night. The men work in shifts of no real schedule. They sleep where they fall, against bulkheads, under welding tables, on rolled-up canvas in the shadow of the island structure. They eat sandwiches handed to them by other men whose names they do not know. They drink coffee that has been on a hot plate for so long it tastes like wet metal. Some of them weep briefly from exhaustion and then go back to work. They are not heroes exactly. They are men with a job that has a number attached to it. And the number is going down, hour by hour, no matter what they do. 72 hours, 60, 48. Up in the headquarters building, Admiral Nimitz reads the cable traffic and waits. The Japanese fleet is at sea. Their carriers are somewhere west of the international dateline. Coming. 24 hours, 12. May the 30th, 1942. 9 o'clock in the morning. Yorktown moves. She is towed out of dry dock number 1 with her hull still wet, her welds still warm to the touch, her decks still smeared with oil that no one has had time to clean. Tugs nose her into the channel. Her stacks begin to smoke. Her engines turn over for the first time since the bomb. She holds. She holds. The watertight integrity that should have taken 3 months to restore takes the strain. The patches do not split. The cement in the fuel tanks does not crack. The cables carry power. The boilers come up. She is not the same ship she was before Coral Sea. She is something else now. Part original, part welded patch, part timber and cement and improvisation. A carrier inside a scab. She heads for the harbour mouth, and as she moves, something the yard officers will not put in the official report happens. The shipyard workers are still aboard. Some of them, the ones who could not finish in time, they keep working as she clears the moorings, welding, wiring, sealing. They will be transferred off by small boat once she is outside the breakwater, one last skiff coming alongside to take them away. Until that moment they ride her out to sea. Men in coveralls, with welding goggles pushed up on their foreheads, standing on the deck of a warship that is going to battle. Looking back at the harbour as Diamond Head slides past on their right. Most of them will never see Yorktown again. Down in her hangar deck, her air group is sorting itself out. It is not the air group she sailed with at Coral Sea. Coral Sea ate that one. What she carries now is a patchwork. Bombing Squadron 3, Fighting Squadron 3. Both of them, until 2 months ago, were the air group of USS Saratoga, before Saratoga took a Japanese torpedo in January and went home to be repaired. The pilots of those 2 squadrons have spent the spring of 1942 sitting in San Diego, watching the war happen without them. Now they have been put aboard Yorktown, because Yorktown is the carrier with a hole in the hangar deck that needs filling. The fighter squadron is commanded by a 37-year-old lieutenant commander named John Thack. He has been working in his spare hours on a new way to fly the F-4F Wildcat against the faster, lighter Japanese Zero. A weave. 2 pairs of fighters covering each other's tails in a rolling pattern that, in theory, lets a slower plane defeat a faster one. He has never used it in combat. The dive bomber squadron is commanded by Lieutenant Commander Maxwell Leslie, nearly 40 years old. Annapolis. Quiet, methodical. Yorktown's own scouting squadron and torpedo squadron come aboard with them, scouting 5. Torpedo 3. The torpedo squadron is led by Lieutenant Commander Lance Massey, who has been told, in plain language, what his squadron's chances are in the TBD Devastator they fly. The Devastator is obsolete. Everyone in the Navy who flies one knows it. Slow, fragile, underarmed. The men have lost faith in their own airplane. Massey has not told them this. 4 squadrons, 3 different parent ships. They have never operated together as an air group in their lives. They have 5 days to learn how, while their carrier sprints west across the Pacific toward a place none of them have heard of. Point Luck, 325 miles northeast of Midway Atoll, June 2nd, 1942. When Yorktown closes on the rendezvous, the men aboard Enterprise and Hornet line their flight decks to watch her come in. They have been told that she is dead. They watch her steam over the horizon at 20 knots, smoke streaming from her stacks. A few patches still visible on her flank where the welders did not have time to paint, and they cheer. It is not a movie cheer. It is the cheer of men who have just been told they will not have to fight outnumbered 2-1. It is the cheer of relief. On Yorktown's flag bridge, Rear Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher, 57 years old, Annapolis class of 1906, watches the other carriers slide into formation. He commands Task Force 17. The newer Task Force 16, Enterprise and Hornet, is under Rear Admiral Raymond Spruance. Spruance is not a naval aviator. He is a cruiserman. 6 weeks ago he was commanding the cruisers screening Halsey. Then Halsey came down sick with a skin disease, was carried off Enterprise in agony, and before they took him to the hospital he told Nimitz, "Give Task Force 16 to Spruance." So now an officer who has never commanded an aircraft carrier in his life is steering 2 of the 3 carriers that the United States has in the Pacific. He is 55 years old. He is short, he is famously quiet, he walks miles around the flight deck every day to think. Fletcher is in tactical command of the combined force, Spruance follows his lead. The 3 carriers turn west. Somewhere ahead of them, 4 Japanese carriers are also turning west, toward the same speck of sand in the same empty ocean. And the Japanese carriers do not know they are coming. On the bridge of the Imperial Japanese aircraft carrier Akagi, Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo, 55 years old, the man who commanded the strike on Pearl Harbor, reviews his attack order one more time. 4 fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, around 250 aircraft, the most experienced naval aviators in the world, veterans of Pearl Harbor, of the Indian Ocean raid, of Darwin, of Rabaul. They have not lost. 2 American carriers, the intelligence says. Enterprise, Hornet. His air operations officer is Commander Minoru Genda, 37 years old, the man who designed the Pearl Harbor attack. Genda has war-gamed Midway down to the minute. Every scenario, every contingency. In every scenario, 4 carriers beat 2. There is one variable Genda has told Nagumo that could change the equation. A 3rd American carrier, but that is impossible. Yorktown was eliminated at Coral Sea. The Naval General Staff confirmed it, Tokyo confirmed it, the Emperor was informed. Yorktown is dead. In a wardroom 1 deck below, Commander Mitsuo Fuchida, 39 years old, the pilot who led the first wave into Pearl Harbor and shouted "Tora, Tora, Tora" into his radio, lies in a bunk with his abdomen wrapped in bandages. He had his appendix out 2 days before the operation began. He is too sick to fly. He has come along anyway as an observer, because he cannot bear to miss this. He does not know yet that being too sick to fly is going to save his life. On the carrier Hiryu, 15 miles east of Akagi, Rear Admiral Tamon Yamaguchi, nearly 50 years old, commands the 2nd Carrier Division. Yamaguchi is aggressive. He has argued with Nagumo more than once about whether the Japanese carriers are being used too cautiously. He educated himself in the United States, at Princeton, before the war. He understands America in a way most of his fellow admirals do not. He has tried, over the past months, to tell them what America will become if this war goes long. Nobody has wanted to hear it. June the 4th, 1942, 4:30 in the morning, 240 miles northwest of Midway, the Japanese carriers turn into the wind. 108 aircraft thunder off the decks of Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, climbing into the dawn, heading south to bomb Midway. Lieutenant Joichi Tomonaga, 30 years old, leads them. Behind him, on the 4 carriers, another 108 aircraft are held in reserve, armed with torpedoes, waiting for the American fleet that Japanese intelligence has assured Nagumo is not yet there. The American fleet is there. 200 miles to the east-northeast of the Japanese force, Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown are already at general quarters. Spruance has decided, with Fletcher's concurrence, to launch as soon as the Japanese carriers are spotted, to strike first, to gamble everything on hitting the enemy while his decks are full of his own returning aircraft. It is going to be the longest morning of any of their lives. 5:30 in the morning, a PBY Catalina patrol plane, flying out of Midway, spots the Japanese carriers and breaks radio silence. Many planes. Heading Midway. 6:30, Tomonaga's Japanese strike hits Midway. The American defenders, mostly outmatched marine fighters, are slaughtered in the air over their own island. The runways are cratered. Buildings burn. Tomonaga radios back to Nagumo. A second strike is needed. This is the moment that the Battle of Midway begins to come apart for the Imperial Japanese Navy. Because Nagumo's reserve aircraft, the second wave, are armed with torpedoes for ships. To attack Midway, they need general-purpose bombs. Nagumo orders them rearmed. The hangar crews on Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu begin the dangerous work of pulling torpedoes off 90 aircraft and replacing them with land attack bombs. Live ordnance is dragged across hangar decks. Stacked in corners, aircraft are packed wing to wing below. 7:28 in the morning. A Japanese scout plane from the cruiser tone reports American ships to the north. 10 ships. Composition unclear. Nagumo freezes. He orders the rearming halted. He asks the scout, "Any carriers?" The minutes drag. The hangar crews stand among their half-rearmed aircraft, ordnance on the floor. 8:20 in the morning. The scout finally replies. The enemy force appears to be accompanied by what appears to be a carrier, singular. The Japanese still believe they are facing 2 American carriers at most. Now they know one is here. Where is the other? Nagumo has to decide. Launch a strike now with the aircraft he has, half of them still loaded with the wrong weapons. Or wait, recover Tomonaga's returning Midway strike, rearm everything properly, and launch a coordinated mass attack. He chooses to wait. He chooses, in other words, to do it by the book. And while he is doing it by the book, the American carriers, 200 miles to the east, are launching everything they have. From Hornet, Torpedo Squadron 8 takes off first. 15 TBD Devastators, plodding, fabric-skinned, miles an hour slower than the Japanese fighters they are about to face. They carry 1 torpedo each. Their fighter escort has lost them above the clouds and cannot find them again. They go anyway. Lieutenant Commander John Charles Waldron, 41 years old, part Sioux on his mother's side. Born in Fort Pierre, South Dakota, he has trained these men himself. He has told them, the night before, exactly what he believes is about to happen. He has written letters home that read like farewells because he believes they are. 9:20 in the morning. Waldron's 15 Devastators find the Japanese fleet. There are no American fighters with them. There are dozens of Japanese Zeros above them. Waldron leads his squadron down to the wave tops and pushes in toward the Japanese carriers at 110 knots. The Zeros come down on them like falling stones. Devastators begin to burn, 1 by 1, then 2 by 2, then more. The radios on the American carriers go quiet, then crackle with fragments. A pilot saying, "I'm on fire." A pilot saying nothing at all, his microphone keyed open as he hits the water. 15 aircraft go in, 15 aircraft go down. No torpedoes hit. Of the 30 men of Torpedo 8 who launched from Hornet that morning, 29 are dead. The 30th is Ensign George Henry Gay, 25 years old, who is now in the Pacific, his life jacket inflated, hiding under a rubber seat cushion as Japanese carriers steam past him within a few hundred yards. He watches the battle from the water. He watches Torpedo Squadron 6 come in next from Enterprise, 14 Devastators under Lieutenant Commander Eugene Lindsay. Lindsay, badly bruised from a crash landing days earlier, has insisted on leading them anyway. 10 of his 14 aircraft are shot down. Lindsay is killed. No torpedoes hit. He watches Torpedo Squadron 3 come in last from Yorktown, 12 Devastators under Lieutenant Commander Lance Massey, the squadron leader who never told his men how slim their chances were. 10 of his 12 are shot down. Massey is killed. No torpedoes hit. In just over an hour, the United States Navy has lost 35 torpedo bombers and most of their crews against the 4 Japanese carriers, and put not one warhead into any of them. By every reasonable measurement of war, this is a catastrophe. Aboard Akagi, on the bridge, the Japanese officers are watching their fighter pilot's victory. The American torpedo attack has been broken. The carriers are unhurt, but to break those torpedo attacks, the Japanese Combat Air Patrol, every Zero in the sky over the Japanese fleet, has been pulled down, all the way down. To wave top altitude, their fighters are at sea level, low on fuel, low on ammunition, some of them landing back on their carriers to rearm. Others still chasing the last fleeing American torpedo planes across the water. Above them, the sky over the Japanese carriers is empty. And out of that empty sky, at exactly the wrong moment for the Empire of Japan, the dive bombers are coming. 10:20 in the morning, June the 4th, 1942. Above the Japanese fleet, 14,000 feet up, where the air is thin and the sun is hard, 2 squadrons of American dive bombers arrive over the empty sky that the Japanese fighters have just left behind. They have not coordinated this. They are not supposed to be here at the same time. From Enterprise, Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey has led his 30-some SBD Dauntlesses past the point of fuel exhaustion looking for the Japanese, almost given up, then spotted a single Japanese destroyer racing northeast across the empty water. The Arashi, returning to her formation after hunting an American submarine. McCluskey has followed the wake of that one ship like a thread, and the thread has led him here. From Yorktown, Lieutenant Commander Maxwell Leslie has lost his own bomb on the way, an electric arming switch malfunctioning, 3 of his pilots accidentally jettisoning their ordnance into the Pacific. He has come on anyway with the bombers he has left. He has navigated by dead reckoning, by intuition, by a hunch, and he has arrived at this same patch of sky at this same impossible moment. 2 American squadrons, from 2 different carriers, above 3 Japanese carriers with their flight decks packed with armed and fueled aircraft, their hangars stacked with loose ordnance from the rearming chaos. The Japanese fighters are at sea level. Nobody is watching the sky. Leslie tips Yorktown's bombers over onto Soryu. Most of McCluskey's men dive on Kaga. 3 of them, under Lieutenant Dick Best, peel off to Akagi at the last moment. The Dauntlesses fall. 6 minutes, that is all it takes. At 10:25 in the morning, 3 of the 4 Japanese fleet carriers that opened the Pacific War are columns of fire on the surface of the sea. Kaga, struck by 4 bombs from Enterprise, her aviation gasoline lines ruptured, her hangar a single roaring blowtorch. More than 800 of her crew will die today. Akagi, the flagship of the man who hit Pearl Harbor, struck by 1 bomb that lands in exactly the wrong place, among her own armed aircraft. Secondary explosions tear her open. Nagumo is transferred off in a panic, climbing down a rope to a waiting destroyer. Soryu, struck by 3 bombs from Yorktown's bombing 3, breaks open along her flight deck and burns from end to end. Her captain, Ryusaku Yanagimoto, refuses to leave the bridge. He goes down with her singing the Japanese national anthem. His men can hear him as they swim away from the burning ship. On the bridge of the last Japanese carrier, Hiryu, 15 miles east of the burning hulks of her sisters, Rear Admiral Taman Yamaguchi watches 3 pillars of black smoke climb into the morning sky. He stares at them for a long time. Then he begins to count attacking aircraft from the reports coming in. The number does not work. It has never worked all morning. The American torpedo planes, the dive bombers, the aircraft from too many directions, the numbers have always been just a little too high. A carrier in the American fleet carries about 75 aircraft. 2 carriers, 150. What Yamaguchi has just been hit with is more than that. 3 carriers. The Americans have 3 carriers at Midway. Yorktown is not dead. The number has been wrong for 48 hours, and it is too late. Yamaguchi does not have time to grieve over arithmetic. He has Hiryu. He has her air group. He has a few hours of daylight left and a wounded enemy somewhere east of him. He orders the strike, 18 Aichi dive bombers, 6 Zero escorts, Lieutenant Michio Kobayashi leading them. They climb away from Hiryu, heading east, hunting an American carrier. They find one a little after noon. The carrier they find is Yorktown, the patched ship. The ship that, by every official record in the Empire of Japan, is sitting on the bottom of the Coral Sea. Kobayashi pushes over. The Yorktown fighter screen tears into the Japanese strike. John Thack's weave is being used in combat for the first time in history, and it is working. Zeros are coming apart in mid-air, but Kobayashi's dive bombers get through. 3 bombs hit Yorktown. The first goes through her flight deck and explodes on the hangar deck below. The second sets her stack on fire and chokes off the air to 3 of her boilers. The third ruptures steam lines deep in her engineering spaces. She slows, and then she stops, dead in the water in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The Japanese pilots climbing away can see her clearly, smoke pouring from her stack, no headway, a list developing. For the second time in 27 days, they leave her looking finished. Kobayashi is killed in the air over Yorktown. Half his squadron does not come home. Below decks, Yorktown's damage control men go to work in the dark. Some of them are the same men who patched her at Pearl Harbor 7 days ago. The same hands, the same techniques, the same refusal to accept the manual. They contain the fires. They counterflood. They wedge timber against split bulkheads. They relight the cold boilers one at a time. Within an hour, Yorktown is moving again. Within an hour and 20 minutes she is making 19 knots. A new American flag, larger than the one before it, is hauled up to her foremast by a sailor who wants the Japanese to see who they are fighting. 2:30 in the afternoon, Hiryu sends her second strike, 10 torpedo bombers, the last she has, 6 Zeros. The leader is Lieutenant Joichi Tomonaga, the man who led the dawn raid on Midway. Tomonaga's aircraft has a hole in one fuel tank from a bullet he took that morning. He knows he does not have the fuel to make it back to Hiryu. He climbs in anyway. He says goodbye to his ground crew. He does not say it in a way that draws attention. The Japanese strike heads east. When it arrives over Yorktown, the pilots see something they cannot make sense of. The carrier in front of them is underway, 20 knots, no fires visible, no list. Fighters being launched from her deck. They have been told they are coming back to finish off a damaged ship. This ship is not damaged. Tomonaga radios Hiryu. We are attacking a second American carrier. It is the same carrier they bombed 2 hours ago. Yorktown has been patched, again between the waves, by men who have stopped sleeping. And the patch is good enough to fool the men who put the first holes in her. Tomonaga leads his torpedo planes in low. The American anti-aircraft is murderous. Tomonaga's airplane is hit. It cartwheels into the sea a few hundred yards from Yorktown's bow. He does not get out, but before he dies, his torpedoes are in the water. 2 of them hit. They strike Yorktown on her port side, almost in the same place, and they tear her open. Her power dies, her rudder jams. She begins to list, slowly at first, then faster. Captain Buckmaster on the bridge listens to the reports coming up from below. 26 degrees of list. 30. The pumps cannot keep up. The generators are flooded. He cannot save her from where he is standing. He gives the order, abandon ship. In neat, terrible columns, more than 2,000 of Yorktown's men go over the side into the Pacific. They form up on the destroyers and cruisers that come in close to pick them up. They watch their ship from the water, listing, smoking, refusing to roll. She is still afloat at sunset. She is still afloat in the morning. Late that same afternoon of June the 4th, Hiryu's luck runs out. Dive bombers from Enterprise, joined by Yorktown's own orphaned bombers who have landed on Enterprise for fuel, find Hiryu running northwest. 4 bombs hit her. She becomes the 4th Japanese carrier to burn. Rear Admiral Yamaguchi, the man who studied at Princeton and tried to tell his colleagues what America would become, refuses to leave the ship. He sends his men off into the destroyers. He gives away his sword and his cap. He stays. Hiryu is scuttled by Japanese destroyers in the grey of the next morning, with Yamaguchi still aboard her. The Imperial Japanese Navy will never recover from those 24 hours. But Yorktown is not done dying. June the 6th, 2 days later, 200 miles east of where she was hit. Captain Buckmaster has come back aboard with a salvage party of volunteers. Hundreds of his men have come with him. They are pumping out flooded compartments, cutting away wrecked aircraft, counterflooding to bring her upright. The destroyer USS Hammond is lashed alongside, providing power and water. The fleet tug Vireo is pulling them slowly east. She is going to make it. That is what the men working on her hangar deck are starting to believe. A mile away beneath the surface, the Japanese submarine I-168 under Lieutenant Commander Yahachi Tanabe has been hunting them for hours. He has slipped through the destroyer screen. He has worked his way to inside 2,000 yards. 1:31 in the afternoon. He fires 4 torpedoes. One of them passes ahead of everything. One of them strikes the destroyer Hammond amidships and breaks her in half. 2 of them hit Yorktown. Hammond goes down in about 4 minutes. Her own depth charges, sinking with her, detonate beneath the men who are floating in the water where she used to be. The blast kills dozens. The Pacific turns red around them. Around 80 of Hammond's crew are dead. Yorktown shudders, takes on more water, but holds. She holds through the rest of that day. She holds through the night. The men who have just lost Hammond's people watch her from the rescue ships, willing her to stay up. Just before dawn, on June the 7th, 1942, USS Yorktown rolls onto her port side. And then she goes slowly, with dignity, her flag still flying. Her stern goes down first, her bow rising one last time against the morning sky. Then she slips beneath the Pacific and is gone. Far away by now, deep beneath the same ocean, Lieutenant Commander Tanabe writes up his action report. He believes he has sunk an American aircraft carrier. He is not entirely sure which one. The Empire of Japan will spend the next several weeks arguing about which American carriers were actually at Midway, and how many of them are still afloat. They will never be entirely certain that the ship they killed at Coral Sea is the same ship that killed Soryu, and the same ship that I-168 finally finished off in the middle of the open sea. That confusion will follow Yorktown all the way to the bottom. The Battle of Midway is over. 4 Japanese carriers are gone. 1 American carrier is gone. The strategic initiative in the Pacific has shifted, and it will never shift back. In Honolulu, in a basement room without windows, Commander Joseph Rochefort lights a cigarette and reads the casualty lists. Among the names are men he has never met, who flew off Yorktown's deck because his codework told them where to be. In Pearl Harbor, the 1,400 workers from Dry Dock No. 1 read the news in the paper the way everybody else does, and then they go back to work on the next ship. There is no medal for what they did. There is no parade. A few of them will keep for the rest of their lives a small piece of welding rod or a scrap of cable from those 3 days in a desk drawer at home and never quite explain to their children why. 56 years later, in the spring of 1998, a research vessel under Robert Ballard, the man who found the Titanic, lowers a camera more than 3 miles into the Pacific. In the lights of the camera, the wreck of USS Yorktown stands upright on the floor of the ocean. Her bow is intact, her flight deck is intact. The hull plating along her port side, where Tomonaga's torpedoes hit, is torn open in a wound the size of a house. And down the length of her hull, plain in the artificial light, are the rectangular shapes of welded plates, patches, the metal scab, still there, still holding. 3 miles below the surface of the sea, the men who put those patches on are mostly gone now. The men who flew off her deck are mostly gone now. The men who sailed her and the men who sank her are mostly gone now. What they did in those 3 days in May of 1942 and on that one terrible morning in June did not save the world by itself. It bought time, it bought one battle, it bought the moment in which a war that was being lost began very slowly to be won. That is what 72 hours can do, sometimes when 1,400 ordinary men decide that a deadline matters more than a manual. That is the story of USS Yorktown. She is still down there. She is still patched.